This is a demo on how to load your palette knife, and for this video I am using gold green, ultramarine blue, quinacridone violet, titanium white, and dioxazine purple. And these colors don't matter that much, but I just want to let you know what I'm using. They're not necessarily colors that you need to use, but this is just for the sake of demonstration. I have a number 1 palette knife with me, and as you can see, it's fairly clean. So you're going to want to start with a clean palette knife, and we are only using the back side of it. It's pretty much just what you're going to use to apply paint, is just the back side. So I have my colors here, and first I'm going to show you how to use your palette knife to spread paint on your canvas, and you're just going to dip it into your paint to get a nice blob on the palette knife. And you're not going to use a lot of pressure. This is kind of like spreading butter on a bagel or icing on a cupcake. And this is just for the sake of getting a nice smooth base put down on your canvas. So you can get some pretty even layering here. Nice base of color. In my courses, I haven't been using this to date, but I just wanted to show you, in case you're wondering, you can use it to spread paint onto your canvas. Now I'm going to wipe off my palette knife in between applications. And now I'm going to use a method where I'm going to use a couple of different colors on my palette knife, and I'm going to create, let's say, this would be like if you wanted to add some greenery. So I'm just going to put a little bit of color right there. Take some of my blue, lay it next to it. You can do a little blending, but do not over blend. I'm going to take a little bit of white, and I'm going to add that as well. So as you can see, I've got some nice streaks in there. And then this is what my palette knife ends up looking like. My colors are not blended. They're sitting next to each other on the knife. I have a decent amount on there. It's not too thick, but it's not too thin either. And I'm just going to come over to my canvas. And this would be like if I was making some green leaves, for instance. You can also dip back into your paint palette and add more color to your palette knife this way. But this way you get a nice variation of different colors in your stroke at the same time. Again, I'm going to wipe off my palette knife. And I'm going to show you how you can draw some lines with your palette knife. So again, just picking up some color here. And this time I am pushing the paint around with the edge of my palette knife. So the edge of my palette knife has paint on it. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to angle my palette, like this is straight up and down. I know the camera angle doesn't look like it, but I'm going to slightly angle my palette knife. So I'm using kind of the edge, but also a little at the back side. And this is how you make some nice lines so that you can, say, add some stems to your roses. Again, I've got this, let's see if I can show you. Can you see how the side of the palette knife, there we go. So it's kind of on the side of it. And the back side, of course. But we're using the side of it on an angle and we're just making lines. And you're not going to get a real long line. That's actually pretty good. But you might need to come back in and there. So that's how you make lines. Cleaning my palette knife off again. And I'm going to come over and I'm going to pick up some white. And this one is the quinacridone violet, and I've got that mixed in there. And like I said, I don't want to overly mix, but you can see I've got kind of a nice combination of the white and that pink there. And again, just using the back of the palette knife. And here I'm going to kind of do like the motion of how I would make my petals. And you can imagine that there's already a base color down on my canvas. And I'm just coming in and I'm applying a heavier pressure for this because I don't want it to be too gloppy and blobby. But you can kind of see how the rose is forming if I just do these swirls here. And again, this is a harder pressure. And you'll have a bunch of skips. It's not going to be a nice smooth line, a nice smooth stroke. And that's how palette knives are. They're not easy to control. So the idea is just being nice and loose with them and letting your shapes look very imperfect and organic. And honestly, that's the beauty of working with a palette knife. It ends up looking a lot looser and more spontaneous. So the idea is not to try and control it too much. Now I'm going to wipe my palette knife off again, and I'm going to switch to a different palette knife. So I know for my courses, I also use this kind of spoon-shaped, rounded palette knife. And I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit with this one. I use it for mostly larger paintings than the ones I did in the rose demo, but this one, it's similar, just going to use the back of the palette knife. I'm going to come in, get a little bit of white over here. And again, mixing, but not mixing so it's blended, just mixing so I have like, you know, all the colors now on my palette knife. Actually, I'm going to take a little more so it's a little thicker. And you can see how that would make a pretty petal on a larger rose or flower. And then, so you saw me drag it this way. Now I can also drag it this way and kind of sculpt like that. And again, you can see mostly the paint is concentrated here on the side because I am right-handed. And so I've got this angled kind of, gosh, it's hard to show because of the camera angle, but I'm not using it completely flat. I'm angling it on my canvas. So my pressure that I'm applying is not flat, it's angled. And again, I'm gonna come this way and just show you what that looks like. And the nice thing is I can just keep layering it and until I get something I like there. Pretty. And I don't think about it too much when I'm painting about how I'm applying color, because for me, it's very instinctive. I've been doing this for years. So as you see, I'm just kind of coming back here and picking up the colors I want and seeing how it looks. It's all an experiment. So I'm experimenting directly onto my canvas here. Just picking up color, again, using an angle to apply it and using kind of a nice wrist motion to kind of pull it upward at the end. And the thing about palette knives is it'll take you a while. It takes a while to get the hang of how to use them. So I think sometimes as adults, we get impatient. We think we should be able to learn things very quickly, and that's just not always the case. So with a palette knife, you have to be patient. It's a lesson in patience. And again, because I'm coming down this way and then I'm changing angles. So I'm coming down this way and then I'm changing angles this way. I'm getting this kind of shaped stroke. Very pretty. Whoops, can you see that? So that's it. I hope that helps a little bit. Like I said, don't be impatient with yourself. These things really take a while to learn. A palette knife is nothing like painting with a brush. And I actually like to think of it, I mentioned a couple of times in the course that I like to think of it as sketching, especially with this little guy. You're really applying the paint like you're sketching. Which is different than how I would use a brush. But as you can see, you can get some nice control. I like to work quickly too. I don't want to labor too long in one area. And I think it makes a lot of difference in how I paint, because I just don't get caught up in the details. Anyway, hope that helps. Kind of a fun little exercise. So I think the best thing to do is just to practice and make boards like this. You can always gesso over them again, and keep practicing. Keep applying your strokes with your palette knife, and you'll feel after a while more and more confident. All right. So anyway, thanks for joining me.